Hello and welcome to another episode of Coaching Coffee. I'll bet none of you know that I have a degree in psychology. It's actually a master's, no big deal. I don't have that. I don't have that at all. However, today we're going to talk about some pieces, the broad pieces of the psychology of racing and some important psychological factors to consider for racing. Make sure you have your coffee with you. I don't do this to drink alone. Please drink with me. I'm sitting out here in the chilly, cool cloud around me, and be my friend and drink coffee with me. So the psychology of racing overview. I'm not a doctor or a registered psychologist or anything. So we need to talk about a few different things. One, apparel. There are psychological factors in apparel. The way you know this is true is when you see people who do not have a lot of money wearing expensive things around. Why do they do it? One, status symbol. Two, makes them feel really good about themselves. So with apparel for racing, it is important for most people. There are going to be exceptions to the rule. Some people think differently. Minds work differently a little bit. But for most people, you want to be wearing clothing that is comfortable and that you like. If you are doing those two things, you are going to feel more confident about your racing. Part of the reason why we're always telling people to train and practice with what they're going to do before a race is because it helps build mental confidence for that. The same thing goes for what you're wearing during a race or for a race. If you have trained in it and you found it trustworthy and you found it and you've enjoyed wearing it or using it for the races, for the training, it's going to be a psychological advantage for you at the race. For instance, for myself, when I first started in OCR, I wore shorts because that's what I had. Just baggy shorts, not compression shorts. After a while, I found I was tearing up my knees a lot at races, and that was a distraction to me because if they get cut up at, like a barbed wire crawl, but then you have to crawl later on, or you need to put your knee up against something like the box at Spartan Race, maybe your knees banging against that or something, it's much less comfortable, and all of those discomforts are things that you have to work through. The less discomforts you have, the less you have to work through, the more you can focus on other things and other portions of your race. So you try and eliminate discomforts. So I decided to start trying compression pants, and I very quickly found that I was more comfortable in them. The compression pants I got were Salming compression pants because I work with Salming, and they looked good. I liked the way they looked. They had zippers on the side down by the legs, which I actually liked a lot because it meant it was way easier to get them off. Little things like that were very important to me because all the little things that I liked made me like them way more, made me feel better wearing them. My knee stopped getting torn up, running through thorns and prickers and all that. I wasn't getting cut up nearly as much, which not a big deal, but it's just another factor to deal with. And so occasionally during races I would get poison ivy a little bit. Usually wash pretty good afterwards so I wouldn't get it, but it would happen sometimes. Obviously with compression pants on, I stopped getting it on my legs at all. So that was an extremely valuable change I made. It took some experience and learning to do that. They were also better as far as not being baggy and flopping around like baggy shorts normally are when they get wet and heavy and everything. So it was a huge upgrade. I felt way more confident overall running in them as far as how I could perform and the things I didn't have to worry about anymore. Same goes for shoes. If you are confident in a brand, wear that brand. If you think the shoes look good, you're going to be more likely to enjoy running in them. Everything there's a balance. Everything's kind of like paradoxical in a sense where I don't encourage people to train for looks. I encourage them to train for performance. But if you if you like the way you look, it's obviously very helpful psychologically. And it's just the way human brains are wired. If they like the way they look, a lot of times they perform better. That's true in a business environment. When you dress up nice, you feel more confident. And it's true in the race environment. If you're wearing clothes that you like or that look good, you feel more confident. And confidence matters. It matters. That's why we have you practice and train, because it builds confidence. So besides apparel, another thing that may help you psychologically for racing, and this is something that's been talked about widely across all sports, is envisioning yourself doing the race, or envisioning yourself doing a certain obstacle. If you struggle with that in the past, spend the time, sit down, close your eyes, and think about how you would go through that obstacle. I can think about this specifically with Savage Race. I've done this multiple times. I don't know why more with Savage Race than other ones. I guess Spartan Race's obstacles are they're not easy per se, but I haven't struggled with them for a long time. For several years now. And Savage, I haven't struggled with any of the obstacles, but I know the propensity to fail one is higher because they're more technically challenging and difficult, and they are much more likely to change up an obstacle even in a small way than Spartan is. Combining two obstacles or changing up the end or start of it with a different grip or whatever. So they're more technically challenging. So if I'm headed to a Savage Race, I will typically look up what obstacles are there, and I will think about going through them so that when I actually get to the obstacle during the race, whatever my brain came up with beforehand is what I will try and execute on the course. To date, that has not failed me. I can't think of a single time where that's ever gone wrong. As long as you have the strength to do it, which is why you train, then planning it out in your head, even if you find out afterwards it wasn't the best way to do it, maybe there was a faster, more efficient way to do it, maybe you didn't need to be so cautious and you could have been a little more risky and gone faster through it, at least you made it through it, and that's a learning experience, but you planned ahead. Psychologically, you were significantly more ready for it. I like to program myself for races. As far as human beings are extremely habitual. They like habit, they like consistency, and if you can develop a habit around something, and this is why you'll see Olympic athletes and professional athletes go through the same or extremely similar routines before games and events, because if you can get yourself in the mindset for racing, no matter what that is, you can create whatever pre-race environment you want to make that. So coming up with a routine pre-race and listening to the same music each time before a race is extremely valuable, and maybe that's something you want to try in training ahead of time, where you listen to certain music as you're driving to your training place, walking to it, whatever, or just stretching and warming up. Go through the exact same warm-up routine each time, and then bam, do your training routine, do your race, whatever. You can condition your brain and your body to want to do something based on the environment you create for it. That's one thing that is super cool about people. It's also super abused, but they are conditionable. So if you're conditioning yourself and mentally creating certain environments for yourself where your body reacts a specific way and it's the way you want it to, that's going to be extremely valuable for you psychologically. You're not going to struggle nearly as much before the race, during the race, or after the race with worrying about certain things, or maybe you didn't want to do it that morning, it was too early, you haven't gotten enough sleep that week, you're tired, your muscles are sore, whatever. Set yourself a routine, it will help a ton psychologically. Another thing, and this is somewhat paradoxical as well, confidence, as far as people have really gotten into positively talking to themselves, talking themselves up. I've never found that very valuable personally. I know there are athletes who do find that valuable. For me, I do better criticizing myself or questioning myself at least, and I do better if someone else, depending on the person, encourages me versus me encouraging myself. I know what I'm capable of because of the amount of training I've put into something. I know what my peak capability is if I'm forced to perform as hard as I possibly can at a race. So I'm usually pretty confident in those things. I usually try and give myself a little bit of extra challenging motivation to be like, you got to push harder than you've ever pushed today or something. But talking positively to yourself has been shown to be helpful for many people. So don't think negatively about the race coming up. Don't think, oh man, I'm gonna suck at this, or don't think, man, I'm gonna fail that obstacle. Until you have failed that obstacle, think about completing that obstacle and think about doing whatever it takes to complete it within the rule set. Not giving up, constantly pushing. If you've been training really hard for your race, remind yourself about that. There are some athletes that we train with Trio Fitness OCR, one of which who's done, right now at least, I think she's on week 27 or 28. I think it's week 28 this week. She's been training 28 weeks, and the difference from week 1 to now as far as physical capability and mentality and what they considered hard before and now what they consider hard is so drastic that it's worth it to remind yourself where you were, how much work you've put in day after day, all the pain, all the suffering, all the times you didn't want to do it but you still did, and that's how you got to where you are. And then I'm just going to go and throw that same mentality out on the course today. Psychologically, that's going to be a huge factor if you have been preparing. And that's another reason why it's so important to train and prepare, because if you haven't been doing that, you don't have that knowledge, that realization, that actuality to fall back on and say, I've worked for this. I've put in the work to do well here today. If you haven't done it, that's not something you can do to help boost your confidence, because what are you falling back on? The fact that you didn't prepare? So that's an extremely important psychological thing to consider. Who you're with, who you're racing with or against, who came with you that day, having just good conversations with those people, enjoying it, having fun, laughing, it's going to loosen you up. If you're super stressed before a race, it's not going to be helpful to your race. If you're stressed, it just does, it's essentially overall a negative performance. It's a detriment to performance to be extremely stressed before and during a race. So you want to be as relaxed as you can. You want to enjoy times. If you're angry at someone or you just had an argument with someone and you need to race, that's going to be in the back of your mind. You may be able to shove it out when the race starts. Maybe you're not. You don't want any distractions. So psychologically, it's important that you just have fun, good conversations. You relax. With athletes before a race, I've been to enough races multiple times that I know a lot of the people who go to those races, and I've raced against them on multiple occasions now, so I just try and say hi, talk to them, keep things just light and happy, and I don't go into any deep topics or anything like that, and so I feel good talking to them. I feel good about them. I'm not angry at them. I'm not looking at them like, oh, I gotta crush this person. I'm just feeling good and happy. And then when I get on the course, it doesn't matter who it is in front of me, I just want to beat them. I don't care who it is. There have been times occasionally where someone pissed me off with their behavior or their attitude and how they were treating other people, either at the start line or before a race or after a race previously, and now we're at a different race. And I will go out of my way to beat them, and I don't think I've ever not beaten someone in that category before, because I didn't like the way they were treating people or me or behaving. I thought they were poor sports and everything, so I just wanted to make sure I beat them. It was good. It was cathartic for me, but that's not what I would recommend overall, because it's you take yourself out of racing and performing as best you can and you just put it into beating one person. And what if that person is in 7th place and you want to be in 1st? You may settle for just getting 6th or 5th, but you may not be like, oh, I need to focus on beating 3rd or 2nd or 1st place if they're ahead of you at that time. So those are all important psychological things to consider. There's far more that goes into it. What you eat before a race, you need to be confident in the food that you're eating, which means you should have practiced having that food, setting the space between when you eat and when you race, and then training on that food so that on race day your body's used to that type of thing. Making sure you have a routine, everything set, and that you're confident in what you're wearing, you enjoy what you're wearing, you enjoy what you're eating pre-race, you enjoy being around the people you're around before the race, you're happy, you're feeling light and excited. All of those things are extremely valuable and they take work. If you don't work for them, you're leaving things up to chance, and as I'm sure all of you at this point in life know, anytime you leave things up to chance, you're probably going to end up with a situation that is less ideal than you want it to be. It's about to rain. Considering I'm in a cloud, that's not very surprising right now. So that's all I have for you today. Consider the psychological factors, work on those things, be confident in yourself, in what you're wearing, in who you're around, in your capabilities, and prepare mentally for your races, because at a certain point, every race becomes a mental struggle, not just a physical one. I will catch you next time on Coach and Coffee.